Buongiorno, I'm Davide Vaccarini reporting to you from Arvi headquarters in Milano. We have with us today one of the gifted winemaker of the most emblematic maison of Champagne, Dom Pérignon. Nicolas, thank you very much to be with us today.
It's a pleasure, Davide.
I wanted to ask you, Dom Pierre Pérignon obviously had an historic impact into the Champagne world. What do you believe you really bring into the game?
I think Dom Pierre Pérignon was very important for Champagne, for the wine and for the region because of his vision. He was a man with great ambition, great talent also, but he had a vision to take Champagne beyond the borders of Champagne and beyond the borders of France. He was a very talented viticulturist, so he did spent a lot of time in the vineyards, and he was a very good technician, and he perfected or started to work very closely, studied very closely the pressing of the grapes and the extraction of white juice from red grapes, Pinot Noir or Pinot Meunier.
He was a pioneer.
He was very much a pioneer and very dedicated to his cause. Obviously dedicated to God also, but also dedicated to the wines of Champagne. And I think it was really his vision and ambition that was so crucial for the region and for the wines. He wrote his name on the label, and he was the first winemaker to do this. And he also sold his wine to Louis XIV. At the Palais de Versailles.
Wow.
So that was a very important step for the wines of Champagne.
So, Nicolas, how would you describe Dom Pérignon in 3 words?
Dom Pérignon in 3 words, I think for me, the first word, which encompasses all of the elements of Dom Pérignon, is harmony. I think when we're making the wine, when we're blending the wine, this is absolutely crucial to start in a place of harmony and finish in a place of harmony, which may be 15 or 16 years later for P2, or it may be 25 years later for P3. A word which has more particularly to do with the wine itself, I think, is complexity. It's a very complex wine in terms of its aromas, in terms of its mouthfeel. It's very, very silky, but also with a certain depth. And I think it's a wine which develops in the glass. Yes. So it is changing. So you see a complex array of aromas and mouthfeel. And the third word, although I think it's not a descriptor exactly, I don't think we can talk about Dom Pérignon without talking about time. Not only the history of Dom Pierre Pérignon, but time in the sense of Dom Pérignon being a vintage-only wine, and also time in the sense of the vintage release or the P2 or the P3. We have to make wines that age for a long time, and we are always projecting ourselves in time to see where Dom Pérignon will be, not in 8 or 9 years for the vintage, but also in 15, 16, 17 years for the P2.
Which is the hardest part.
Yes, a crystal ball, as we say, would be useful, but I think time is inextricably linked to Dom Pérignon.
So tonight we're going to have the pleasure to taste 3 of the most spectacular vintages for P2, with the 95, 98 and 2000. What are the main differences between these vintages?
95, 98 and 2000, 3 very different vintages. 1995 was a dream year, a fantastic year to grow grapes, and a fantastic year to make wine. I think it is the most complete wine. There is fruit, there is minerality to this wine, and I think it's a very balanced and complete wine, but a fantastic vintage, 1995. 1998 was a warm vintage. I think it has produced wines with a very strong personality, a very powerful vintage. The weather was hot, but with some ups and downs during the year. But it has produced wines with a certain power and richness, which is drinking very, very nicely today. The 2000 was a vintage with a little bit more difficult in terms of the climate, and a few zigzags on the way to finding the ripeness. So ripeness was not just a straight line; it had to find its own way, and I think wines with more subtlety, technically very, very correct, very excellent balance between acidity and fruit ripeness. But I think the 2000 still needs a little bit of time to open up. Still a young wine, and it will open up with time, and it will take on energy and continue to expand.
It will find its dimension.
Find its new dimension, its new expression. It's almost there, but I think just a little bit more time. The 2000 is a very interesting wine. I think it's very complex, very harmonious, and I think a lot of small increments in this wine working together to take the wine forward and give it some great aging potential.
We have tonight the possibility to start to taste 2009 vintage, but actually 2008 was not released yet. How comes?
2009 was a very warm vintage, and 2008 was a much cooler vintage, and two wines with very different structures. Tonight we'll taste the 2009, and we'll see a wine that is very ripe, has a core of ripe fruit, peach, nectarine, some floral aromas also, and a very seductive palate, and a wine that is very communicative. When we taste the 2008 in the cellars, it is still a wine that is very structured, very, very linear, with a very powerful acidity, and it is taking more time to find its equilibrium with the richness from the yeast lees in the 2008. But two very different vintages, and the first time that Dom Pérignon has released one vintage out of order before the other. But it was really the wine that decided this. The 2009 is so warm and seductive that it's magnificent drinking right now. And the 2008 we'll see in a few months' time or a year and a half's time.
We have to wait for that.
We will have to wait for that, but I think it'll be worth it.
Looking forward. Being only a vintage champagne must be hard to produce Dom Pérignon.
Yes, every vintage is challenging. Dom Pérignon is a vintage-only wine. It always has been, and this is a constraint, but at the same time also an opportunity. So Dom Pérignon can be the witness of a growing season, of a vintage. So through our wine, we can tell a story of the vintage conditions. So it's an opportunity to capture, the essence, capture an element of time within a bottle of champagne, which is a rarity in champagne. 95% of all champagne volume is non-vintage, so a blend of different vintages. Recently, we have released the 2009, which we're going to taste tonight. The 2008 will be to come.
Yes.
2007 was challenging, so we didn't make a vintage in 2007. And then prior to that, we had, for the first time in Dom Pérignon history, we had 5 successive vintages, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, each with their own characteristics. So the first decade of this millennium has been very generous to Dom Pérignon, but it's an honor to be able to present a piece of history, a piece of champagne through Dom Pérignon.
Nicolas, thank you very much again for your time and to come to visit us. Looking forward to taste these amazing vintages tonight, and perhaps next time shall I see you in Dom Pérignon Cave.
Davide, it's been a pleasure, and you are more than welcome in Auvillers.
Thank you very much. Arrivederci.